My name is Sarah. I'm 37 years old, and I want to tell you about the night my husband's entire family sat in a hotel ballroom, raised their glasses to celebrate his promotion, and didn't notice that I was the only person in the room who knew his career was built on a lie. I was sitting third from the end on the left side of the long rectangular table. Not at the center where my husband, Daniel, stood giving a speech. Not next to his mother, Margaret, who had claimed the seat beside him almost before the waiters had finished arranging the chairs. I was at the edge, which was exactly where I had been for most of our marriage. Margaret stood up before Daniel even finished speaking. She tapped her glass. "This family has always known what Daniel was capable of," she said, looking right at me. "Some people doubted, but we never did." If you've ever been publicly dismissed in a room full of people who pretended not to notice, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Because that feeling, calm on the outside but everything tilting on the inside, is something you never forget. Daniel and I had been married for 8 years. When we met, I was a mid-level compliance analyst, and he was a charming, ambitious real estate manager. In those early years, I believed in him. But what I didn't understand was that his mother, Margaret, had a very specific idea of what I was supposed to be in her son's life. A quiet, capable, and completely invisible support structure. Margaret was never openly cruel. She was polished. She would ask about my work with a half attention, then instantly pivot back to Daniel's career. His sister, Joanna, was the same. She had married a wealthy man and stopped working, treating my demanding career with pity rather than respect. Then there was Daniel's younger brother, Callum. Callum worked on the periphery of the property industry, but he spoke with the authority of a CEO. He would slide proposals across family dinner tables for Daniel to consider, acting as though the table belonged to him. But what nobody at that table knew was that I had spent the last 2 years quietly saving Daniel's career. Completely invisibly. 18 months before that ballroom dinner, Daniel had made a massive error. He had pushed through a borderline zoning approval to chase a major commission. When the local council flagged it, the deal nearly collapsed. Daniel came home that night looking like a ghost. He sat at our kitchen table and didn't speak for an hour. But zoning compliance was my specialty. I spent the next 6 weeks working through the night. From our kitchen table, off the books, I drafted the remediation proposal, analyzed precedent cases, and rewrote the council submission in perfect legal terms. The deal was saved. Daniel got the credit, and his path to regional director was cleared. He thanked me once, quietly, the night the approval came through. But as time passed, he chose to forget. We remember the outcome. We forget the scaffold. Back in the ballroom, Callum slid a new proposal across the table to Daniel. He wanted Daniel to hire him into a highly paid advisory role on his new regional team. As I looked at the papers from across the table, my heart stopped. The advisory structure Callum was proposing was identical to a compliance framework I had designed myself 6 months earlier to help Daniel. My name wasn't on it, but my words, my logic, and my sequence were there. Callum was trying to get paid for a foundation I had laid for free. I didn't say a word. I folded my napkin, walked to the restroom, and ran cold water over my wrists. I looked at myself in the mirror and made a decision. I was done being invisible. That Monday, I accepted a formal, highly paid advisory role on a regional regulatory compliance board. A position I had been quietly offered weeks before. Our first task was reviewing recent regional developments. I drafted a standard framework warning firms against hiring unqualified, informal advisors into compliance roles. If Daniel hired Callum, his entire division would face a massive compliance audit. 5 weeks later, the framework was published. Daniel called me panicked. "Our legal team says we have a compliance gap. Something about advisory roles." "I know," I said. "I helped write the framework." When he came home, he sat in the same kitchen chair as before. "If I had hired Callum, we would have been exposed," he whispered. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I thought of the ballroom. His mother's smug toast." "I wasn't sure you were listening," I replied. Callum's proposal was quietly withdrawn. His sister sent me a text. "Daniel is lucky to have you." His mother called me, using my name for the first time in years. But it was too late. Daniel and I had many long, quiet, Painful conversations. He admitted he had allowed his family to underestimate me because it was easier than fighting them. We separated in the spring. It wasn't dramatic. We sat at that same kitchen table and divided our lives with absolute peace. I moved into a beautiful flat where the kitchen window faces east to catch the morning light. My name is now in print, on my own work, where it belongs. I don't regret loving him, and I don't regret the work I did. What I regret is the social silence. The way I sat at the edge of tables and didn't say, "Actually, I built that." I don't keep that silence anymore. Because good work, and a good life, deserve to be seen.